Good evening, everybody. The Music Fan is back, bringing smiles to the faces, knowledge to the people, and, most importantly, music to the masses. And I am back with another 5-minute theory, where I teach you something about music in 5 minutes or less. Now, the last two videos on harmonics and overtones and frequencies and fundamentals and just building out our major scale through overtones were a bit long. But I still have one last thing to go over before we start diving into these scales. So I'm going to do a much shorter video today on solfege and building a major scale. If you haven't watched those last two videos, they aren't vital for you to watch them, but I would recommend to watch them if you want to look at a more scientific approach as to how we make the major scales. So I'm going to start the timer and we're going to get going. So we're going to talk about solfege, but first I want to talk about the structure of a major scale. So technically a major scale has 7 individual notes, but it does have one octave note, making our scale 8 notes. Every note in a major scale is going to be approached by a half step or a whole step. And the cool thing about it is if you take the first 4 notes and the second 4 notes, they both follow the same pattern. So if you have the starting point, right, you go whole step, half step, and then the second set of notes is going to be whole step, half step. That 4th and 5th note is a whole step. Altogether, you have root note, whole, half, whole, half. So what about solfege? Well, solfege is a pattern of notes that helps us determine our set idea for a major or minor scale, or any scale in general. If you've ever watched Sound of Music and know the song Do a Deer, that is an example of what that solfege is. There are 2 ways of doing do. There is a fixed do, which every note of Western music would have a particular syllable. However, I'm not a huge fan of fixed do. I find it very cumbersome, and especially because that way, say you have a C scale, and then you want to do an F scale, you're not starting on do, you're starting on fa, which makes it kind of tricky. So usually, the second approach applies, which is movable do. So it's the same idea, the same pattern, we just have a different starting point. Our solfege are do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and do. Now there are also other versions of those notes depending on what scale we use. Now in the major scale it's always going to be those, but there will be other scales that we eventually go into, minor scales, mode scales, that do change the approach of the solfege. So I'm just going to throw out the other ideas, and that way you can have them for later, and of course we will review them at another point. So the other ones we have is D, which is a raised do, Ra, which is a lowered re, Re, which is a raised re, Me, or Ma. I've never heard Ma before. Usually we go with Me, but that is a lowered Mi. Fi, which is a raised Fa. Se, which is a lowered Sol. Si, which is a raised Sol. Le, which is a lowered La. Li, which is a raised La. And you have Te, which is a lowered Ti. Now, these are basically enharmonic, like we've talked about before. It just depends on what scale you are using. There are some scales where it forces you to have a Fi instead of a Se, or a Re instead of a Me. Most likely it's going to be usually those lowered ones, but there are sharp approaches, and from there you pick and choose basically, based on the scale. So we have our major scale solfege, which we will be using throughout our time. Just a quick recap: do is 1, re is 2, mi is 3, fa is 4, sol is 5, la is 6, ti is 7, and then do is back to 1. That is my time. Thank you so much for watching this short 5-minute theory. If you've learned something or have any questions about what you've learned, of course, let me know in the comment section below. But also let me know of other things that you would like to learn in the future. Share it with your friends, and most importantly, subscribe to my channel so you can watch more videos like these, as well as help this channel become bigger and better. So next week we will finally start going over a scale. We'll be starting with C major. I'll be teaching you the scale, what it entails, the fingerings for piano and guitar, and I'll be giving you some examples of songs that are in the C scale. Until then, this is Music Fan, and I'm signing off.